Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duvall, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who was almost caught this moon stealing the keys to soldiers' storage houses, hiding them around the city.
Tim Longo. I definitely was caught. We were almost to it.
Yeah, when you're almost caught, it's tough for you to hide those keys because taxes ? I don't know. I'm a little confused by some of the things that we're doing in this game. It's like, oh man, I can't wait to go to an alien planet to lower people's taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's Cutter Slade.
We should talk about it.
Talking a big game, a big economic game. Before we do that, we want to dip into some sad news. For those listening to this kind of as it comes out or soon after it comes out, bear with us, especially those who are listening to it sometime in the future, or who are not part of the Discord community. But unfortunately, this past Friday, we lost one of the Discord community members who was pretty active in there and well liked by all. A gentleman by the name of Belmont was his handle. His real name was Jesse. He was, like I said, very active in the Discord community, but he was also a big part of the Defeating Games for Charity event, both last year and this year, which is how I got to actually, both of us got to talk to him, just 3 weeks ago, I think now. So you want to add anything to that? I also have an email from the community to read.
Yeah, I mean, he was a very vocal, and active member of the Discord, and always a very positive person, I found, and was always, often driving, interesting conversations on the Discord, and deeply cared about games, I would say, and even drove one of the fan episodes, I think, or was one of the drivers of the fan episodes with the Final Fantasy 15, and kind of encouraged people to replay that game. And that episode was really fun because there were so many perspectives on there. And then, of course, like Brett said, it's it hits additionally hard because of the last charity event where he streamed while Brett and I, he streamed and played Jedi Starfighter while Brett and I were kind of commentating. So yeah, very sad news. For me, reading the obituary somehow even mentions the charity event.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him well enough to know how that could have been the case, but it was unexpected when I read it. And that was what I think probably hit me the hardest, because it clearly was something that was important to him to make it, to that place. And he streamed the first year, he streamed this year, and helped organize, and yeah, it's sad news. And in the internet, not to sound old, but in the internet age, it's a really hard thing to figure out sometimes,
Yeah.
when we haven't really, we've met him on stream, but never met Belmont in person. So yeah, it's sad.
It was. I have an email from Biostats, Ryan, who also works on the charity, and I'm sure I know he was part of the conversations there, both in planning a lot of last year's charity. I think this year in particular, he was a little limited this year, as it's mentioned in the email, which I guess I'll just go ahead and read now. And it goes like this. As individuals on the Discord are aware, one of our more active members of the DGC community passed away this past week, Belmont, aka Jesse Lane Nelson, and yes, that is his real name. The reason this has hit many of us so hard is that he was just 36. His obituary mentions our Defeating Games event by name and suggests donations to the Video Game History Foundation in his name. We want to offer our condolences to the family and friends. Belmont was always one of the first to greet new members, and in general was known for his positivity and friendly engagement on Discord. He enjoyed replaying old video games enough that a running joke was asking him how many versions of a game he owned. He was instrumental in helping establish our first Defeating Games event and streamed Mega Man X in it. Some personal circumstances limited his involvement to just streaming this year, but it was probably the most fun stream of the event. He roped Brett and Tim into watching him play Jedi Starfighter blind as they told us behind-the-scenes stories of its making. It has been put up on YouTube for all to see. At the very end of the VOD, you can see his smile and joy shine right through. Hug your loved ones a bit more today or tonight, and to Belmont, you will be missed. And that's from Ryan, aka Biostats. And there will be a link in the show notes for that as well. So,
yeah. Wow, great mail. Thanks to Bio for sending that in. Yeah, and then for those who aren't in the Discord or don't come that often, Lost Lake also started a channel in the Discord devoted to remembrance, I'd say, of Belmont. So if you didn't know about that, seek it out. If you had interacted with him and wanted to share some thoughts, that might be a place to go if you wanted to.
Yeah, he was a gentle and very genial presence, and he really will be missed. Really elevated the tenor there in terms of being a really welcoming voice. So we won't dwell on it, I don't think, more than that, but we did want to at least acknowledge it and talk about it a little bit up here at the top, and raise a glass to Belmont and say thanks.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on, let's return to what we were talking about at the beginning, which of course was taxes, because we are playing Outcast from 1999, and I was quite surprised when the second world I went to, the first one, it was like, well, if you start producing rice or excuse me, ris, because of course couldn't just be rice, you will starve the soldiers, and that will weaken their resolve or morale or strength or something, and they won't be able to oppress the people they're oppressing. I want to say one of the things that you mentioned last week was the Mars series or maybe 2 episodes ago, the Mars series by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have to. I watched John Carter, the 2012 movie.
I refuse.
Just I think just last night. Yeah. And I also read about a quarter of the book, the first book of the series. I thought it was very funny because, I went and got it off of Project Gutenberg, which is a free, for things that are in the public domain. There's all these freely formatted ebooks, that you can read, and you can read them in your browser. And I've over the years downloaded a number of things to my, my e-reader, so that I always have something, and it's really funny because I went and looked in the files, oddly, because this is a thing that goes back to the 90s. They're just like numbered in order that they were added. So like when you do the download, it's like PG for Project Gutenberg, and then the number of that it is of the thing. And this one is number 62. So the 62nd book that they chose to add
of all books
that were in the public domain in I want to say 91 or 2, or I don't know, thereabouts. I don't know exactly when Project Gutenberg was established. Number 62 was Edgar Rice Burroughs' A Princess of Mars. Not only that, in the top 100, there are like 7 or 8 more Edgar Rice Burroughs books.
Somebody was a fan.
And, coming after it in the list were like Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer.
Oh boy.
I want to say right before it maybe was the complete works of Shakespeare. That might have actually been after, though. That might have been number 100. I looked at like all the top 100, and there were a lot of things that were really weird in there. There were a lot of stuff that was like, I don't know, the first 100,000 prime numbers or whatever. It's just like, it was weird stuff that people on the internet would just like submit. There were some like government
Oh, it's a
documents.
submit. So you have to. There's a submission process.
Well,
I
at the
don't.
time, I think there was, when it was getting off the ground, and I think when it was just starting, I don't think it's quite the same anymore. I think it's, sort of like Wikipedia kind of grew up, but what it
Mm,
was at the time, I think was a little different. But anyway,
yeah, yeah. It was the pre the crowdsourcing, culture. So probably they
yeah,
didn't know how to do it yet.
they were just figuring all that stuff out. Like just a handful before it was the King James Bible.
Yeah, boy.
So
I mean, Edgar
it
Rice
was a weird
Burroughs
artifact.
is yeah.
He was very popular in his time, and like the more having seen John Carter last night, and then after playing this game most of yesterday, and reading some of the book, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is definitely that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention it. One of the reasons I brought it up, and I actually haven't seen the movie because I refuse to see the movie just based on what I've heard.
it's not terrible, honestly.
Well, the I didn't mention this last time, but I actually have like for however this came to pass, because I'm a nerd. Everyone knows this. I'm obsessed with lore and
No,
story and all that kind of stuff. My dad is a Trekkie, like like die hard, like uber die hard, and
sir,
also,
we prefer Trekker.
well, yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who you're talking to, but they I did use Trekkie intentionally,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but so he's a nerd. But like my whole family loved Edgar Rice Burroughs. My grandmother loved the Mars books. So
Oh wow.
I brought it up because for whatever reason, the Mars books were like a thing with my family, and like people would talk about them all the time, and reread them. And I only read, I think, the first two a long time ago once. So I'm not
Yeah,
like a diehard fan like they are, but it just was funny because for whatever reason it was sort of in my family subconscious, or collective subconscious. So just as a side context for why I so quickly brought it up. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is, I have a, you brought up the taxes as a half serious half joke, but I have a theory that we'll get to, I think, when we talk about some of the story stuff that I'm giving them way too much credit for, but I do have I'm wondering if it all comes back around and might actually justify some of this stuff in an interesting way. But
I'm starting to get hints that it might as well. Certainly at the end of the first, you know,
yeah, yeah,
place that you start, that
right. When you get the first mon, yeah.
kind of reveals what a mon is, and I'm like, wait, what? So it's very,
Which I had
yeah,
this theory, by the way, before the mon, but the
oh,
mon clinched it for me.
clinched it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's yeah, possibly, yeah. It's there's something strange going on here.
but we can
But
get to that later.
we
Yeah,
we probably get
yeah,
to that later or even next week when I've hopefully played more. I also looked this thing up on Gaming World, which I think you also would have seen in the Discord, and it's like a
50.
50-hour game, and I was like, oh no,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I've played like 10 or 12 or something like that, and I've only passed the first episode,
yeah,
although I'm now like I finally am comfortable with the game now. So it's took me a while to kind of get my bearings, and now I get it. Like now I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Though I did have a lot of trouble with the uh I think because I got the tablet, 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, and
Oh, you're talking about the puzzle? Yeah, I did
yeah,
too.
right. And then I'm like,
I was
wait a
wondering
minute,
how that was going to go for you because I was like, I know this is the right answer.
right?
What's happening? This
Yeah,
has got to be a bug.
yeah.
And then I
No,
was like, wait a second.
you gotta
Uh-oh.
talk to them. And he's like, well, when this and the da and the blah and the doody doo, it's like, oh, okay, it's telling me,
Well, you can interpret that tablet in a couple ways. It's like, are you trying to? Is it showing literal order, or is it showing which piece goes into the other slot? And
right? Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
latter.
yeah, yeah. I
But
took it.
I
I
thought it
took it
was
as
like
the
an
latter.
order.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no, I took it as the latter. Because it was kind of this poetic,
Yeah. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
this when
It's
this spirit dominates that spirit type
it's
of thing. I was like,
cool.
oh, okay,
Yeah, I know. I think it's really interesting. The essence is it's a very cohesive, and this will get to the other topic, I think, but I think it's a very cohesively, albeit derivative maybe and very othering, as we talked about. It's a
yeah,
very, I would say, especially as far as I've gotten into the second zone, very well fleshed out,
Yeah.
like world building in
Yeah.
a very interesting way. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, really excellent for its time, for sure. I mean, this
Hmm.
is 26 years
It would
ago, right?
stand out for sure, right? Because
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
other, you know, Quake 2 or
Right,
something,
right.
right? Where
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, okay, yeah, there's not much going on here, story or,
Yeah,
world building
especially for
wise.
something that's a shooter. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the obviously RPGs and things like that had much heavier
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stories, and and they went some interesting places, and they continued to. I mean, they continue to obviously today, but at the time, those are probably the places where your PC gamers were going for the kind of deep story and world building.
Yeah, yeah. Or I still kind of for some reason have Tomb Raider in this bucket a little bit as far as
Yeah,
third
sure.
person.
Yeah,
There's shooting and there's third person stuff and you're exploring, and I guess there's not a lot of NPCs in that though. Like, yeah, we talked about Anachronox and stuff like that, which is a pseudo RPG anyway. So yeah, there were definitely ones in the space, but I don't know, it's just very surprising. This game is I feel like of this era, we say this a lot for these games that are ones that are not as much on people's radars. Not everybody's, definitely on some people's. We've had
right. Yeah,
email about it, but not on my radar. Knowing of it, but also like always wondering like, why is this a cult classic again? And then just being surprised time and time again once you start playing it deeper and deeper. And keep saying second zone. I don't think we can.
right, right.
I'll
Yeah,
get
which
into the world structure stuff, but we can't technically call it that. But the desert zone,
the second
um,
zone we both went to.
yeah, it's I think it's Talanzaar.
Yeah, it's Talanzaar. It's just that it's most convenient to
Yeah, they
the
present it
village.
as you
Yeah.
should go here. I'd say, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the other thing too is that one of the things that can be a little difficult is that I know I talked to, I forget his name, but there's a guy in the village, and he basically tells you about the other worlds and where all the portals go.
yeah.
But you can't ask him again. That information's just gone as far as I can tell. Like, I didn't take
Uh,
notes about it.
you can't. I thought all the. Are you sure? Because
Well,
they're
maybe I didn't find the right guy. It's possible. I thought
they're
I talked
grayed
to.
out, but well, you
Yeah.
could be right. There could be times when dialogue trees
No, I mean,
don't. Yeah.
often dialogue choices. I'm pretty sure I went back to the guys like in the green robe, right? And I'm pretty sure he did not have something about like where all the gates went,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and where to find them, and like, oh, be careful about these two. Make sure that you are prepared, and like those are the ones that are in the kind of main central temple. I think he was talking about those being like, it might have been just that they were better defended. And then I saw one was in like a pool of water somewhere, and it's like that one's completely undefended, which was wild.
That was the
Funny.
one you came through
Oh,
originally.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah,
I
that was
found
the
it
one coming
again.
from
Yeah,
the.
yeah,
Yeah, it is cool that that one is like destroyed in a pool of water. That's
yeah,
really clever. Because
yeah.
I found it later too, and I was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh, wait a second, that's how I got here."
Right, right.
But it's a neat bit of storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that sort of world structure because we've been alluding to it a lot, but you've been kind of skirting it because I hadn't gone through any other gates, and I didn't know about anything else really other than the Shamazar, which I think is the first world beyond the tutorial area that you have to go to, right? So that, and I went and did everything in that, and then was like, well, where do I go next? But
Yeah,
you kind of alluded in pre-show to like, yeah, it's not really the second world.
yeah. Well, yeah, and it's. I think for us, it remains to be seen what role it exactly plays. But I wouldn't say I'm nearing the end, but I've done a lot of stuff in the one that we're both in, the second one that we're both in, and I've hit kind of a basically a gate. And so I'm thinking, and I have some new quests that are telling me to go to other zones before I can complete them. So I'm like, oh, okay, so this is actually the structure of the game. And what I mean by that is, and we've said it in previous episodes, where this game has been described as as one of the earliest, if not, some people have claimed that it's the first open world game. I don't know how bold of a claim that is, um, but but even though it's portal based, you can technically go to any of the zones once you leave the starting, the tutorial zone. And And actually, way before I finished the first zone, I did that. I kind of went through all of them just to see what would happen. And it's, it's like it was way too early to do that because I was just getting killed right away and stuff. But you could do it, and it was as a sort of mini subtopic that we didn't talk about yet because we hadn't hit this macro topic. There's that. One of my favorite takeaways of anything we've done on this podcast is the conversation. So bear with me on this for a second. The conversation we had about picking up an extra heart at the end of Ocarina boss, and how I was just baffled at why they make you pick it up. And then somebody wrote in, I think, right, and was like,
yes. Mm-hmm.
No, idiot. this is why you do that.
What is wrong with you, Tim?
Yeah.
I thought you were a designer.
Yeah, professional game designer here. And I will carry that with me forever now. And the reason I bring it up in this context is you can go to any zone, right? You probably can survive in any zone, even though it's difficult. Like if you want to go to wherever, they maybe have a preferred order, I guess. But I actually don't think so, because by the time both of us finished the first zone, that zone gets basically a state change.
Yeah.
Because you have basically started the rebellion, so to speak, and they're all, and taken out mainly the enemies. It
begins with a single colonialist white guy.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Exactly.
Yes. Well, some commentary bled over again from, John Carter.
who is also a part of the colonialist, who is also a part of their myths, their legends, right? Somehow, and has a name.
Ulukai.
Ulukai, yeah, sure, nothing can go wrong. But just that kind of concept of player-driven dynamic difficulty, right? Or player-driven difficulty. It's like, if I want to, I can, and so I can go to this hard zone, and I'm gonna. If you're good, and I still think the combat's super interesting in this game, because if you really do want to, you can dodge stuff, and really it's probably very difficult, but you could probably make it happen. So it is open world sort of, but it is portal based. So you go through these portals. So at the
it's just not a continuous open world, to be clear.
It's not a continuous open world, but structurally it is.
Yeah.
And so, for various reasons, technology probably being the main
really,
one.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
But there's a point when you get to the second one, and it's not spoiling too much for you, and even though I know you probably don't care too much, where you're like, okay, it's clear that this is a gate for me. But also the fascinating thing, because I do think they present the world that we're in as the second one, like it's the most logical one, because it is in the village basically, or next to the village. So it's like everyone's going to go through that one. And I would even say story-wise and world-building-wise, in that desert zone, it does fit well with the first zone.
Yeah.
So it kind of like, I feel like maybe they developed it that way, or have that structurally that way.
Well, and also when you hear from Marion through the weird hologram thing, she basically says she was in the desert. Like,
they
in the sandy area.
You're right.
They really support, like, go to the desert next. When I got there, I was like, cool, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, and
so it's funny. It was funny in pre-show to hear you say, "Oh yeah, I don't think we can finish this. We have to go do other stuff and come back." I was like, "Oh no!" Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Also, from a story perspective, because you want it to end with him getting the girl back, right? Obviously, right? That's going to be how that works.
Some people do, but yeah.
I'm not sure she does, but yeah.
Uh-oh. Well, I think that whatever in for instance, the strategy guide, this would be the second place they would probably right? So they definitely story-wise direct you to this. But the cool thing about the structure at that point, in my opinion, so far. And I haven't done every single thing in the second zone, but I think I've done most of the things I really can do, because even some of the not side quests, but like quests before you can solve the taxes thing are asking you to leave the zone.
I got that sense, because there's the central conflict seems to be around this water, it's like, well, we're in the desert, so clearly the water's coming from somewhere else, right? So, kind of.
Yeah, I think there's some intrigue going on with there, and there's the whole thing with the well, and like, why is yeah. So you may not have talked to the
No,
person.
I haven't got to that yet, but
Yeah, there's but it's an interesting, like the water thing is an interesting, I think, kind of, I keep calling it world building, but interesting sort of storytelling about sort of the culture and the world and the dynamics, the political dynamics of things, and etc. So there's just way deeper than than I would have thought. But
so it's not a lake, it's an ocean.
okay, yeah, nice. Yeah, definitely. It's
I can I
definitely
can't
the
help
case.
myself. I
But
have a condition.
you do. I've enjoyed. I now am really starting to enjoy that they are. It's both daunting because, like you mentioned, 50-hour game.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I don't know how far I'll make it, but
yeah,
it is very cool because you can't even call it a hub and spoke really. Though if you were to, this desert zone I think is kind of sort of the hub because
yeah. Right. Yep.
because Feyron, who seems to be the essentially the big bad, though I have a theory about that, is in this zone apparently and in the central pyramid, but it's basically locked at one point. You can't get any further, it
Hmm.
seems like. And so yeah, you're gonna have to basically go out to the other zones, probably do all the things there, and then come back eventually. Even the Shamazar basically says, I can't help you until a certain thing happens, and he's vague about what that is. And so I assume that that's another kind of like basically gate that they're trying to get you to leave. Um, so yeah, I just, both of us are still in that zone, so we haven't really fleshed out what that world structure ends up being, but I think we can see. The other unfortunate thing is there's only two other portals, I think, other than the one you came in
Right.
here. So there is one zone. I'm looking. Look at
Yeah,
this.
there's one zone that's not directly
There's
linked.
one zone that's not direct, and so it means I'm going to have to go back to Shamazar, to the central island in Shamazar, and go take that one, I guess, or find one in one of the other zones
Yeah.
because I want to go. I want to go to Okar, but you can't get there directly right now. So it's a little bit weird that they did that, but I mean, just like to bring it back to, and again, another Zelda reference, like we talk about how the initial very first Zelda was technically open world. Um, and we especially talk about that. They talked about that in context of Breath of the Wild. It's just very refreshing to kind of again put this game in its time and think about the structure as it's being kind of unfolded for us. Because the first level was a bit overwhelming because of the way that you get information and do quests, because it's very so opaque,
Right.
as I think you mentioned.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of, it's like you have to remember where things are and you have to talk to people a lot, and you forget things, at least I do. Now
Well,
imagining that
one of the
writ
things I
large.
appreciate though about like asking people about it is that they built a sort of dynamic here's how to find this guy kind of
Yeah,
system,
that's cool.
which is very cool. Like, I didn't really think about it the last couple of weeks because I kind of had brushed up against it, but it was only now that it's like, oh, it's my tool, like to
Yeah,
navigate the story world is like, I go talk to somebody who looks nondescript, and, uh, who looks like, a clone of the other ones, basically, like an NPC without a lot of lines. And I ask him for the person I'm looking for, and he'll say he's in this direction, and here's how far he is, and that's done kind of dynamically as two parts. Like he's to the southeast of me, and it's many steps, to get there, which would mean he's a long ways away. Versus, oh, I just saw him recently, or something like that, which is another thing they'll say. In fact, I had one today with Zoss. I was trying to find Zoss, and for whatever reason, I think he was obscured by a wall for me. And I talked to a guy, and I was like, "Well, I'm looking for Zoss," and he like turns and points. He says he's right there.
yeah. That's what I was
it,
going to
was,
say. It's
it
a
was so good. Yeah,
hotter, colder mechanic, and
yeah,
sometimes they're so close, or they just turn around and point, and you're
yeah.
like, "Oh, that guy." Yeah,
Him. Oh, okay, sure.
yeah. It's like it's so funny. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is a really cool. It is a really. It's like they didn't. I don't know how. It'd be interesting to know how much they actually were conscious of this, but they really committed to to this.
Yeah.
Like they could have given you more information, but they really, I don't know if your point about that I think you have a topic about simulation in a bit, but I don't know if it was like they really wanted it to feel like a real society. So they're
Yeah.
like, no, we're not going to put HUD. Of course, Slade wouldn't know that
Right.
that's who it is. So you have to actually talk to people to figure it out the way you
Yeah.
would in any city. And it's like, yeah, that is true. That is technically true.
Yeah.
but and it is a neat solution. But they really committed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. To that kind of topic, just to touch on, because it's not a deep topic really, but it was I was kind of reflecting because I was just playing a big like JRPG, and while it had a lot of stuff that it kind of externalized and put in characters in the world and things like that, there were a lot of times where it's just like I'm talking to a vendor now. I pay the money, I get the thing. All of that happens in a menu, and at the end, you know, there might be sort of a grace note of them basically saying nice doing business with you or something like that. But here everything is concrete, like to a certain level of fidelity, which is like, okay, yeah, but I can't just go up to you and say I want this, and you give it to me and it appears in my inventory. I have to like animate. I take it out of my backpack,
Yeah,
Cutter's
yeah,
backpack. I hand it over. That's one reason why, like, every time you talk to somebody, they like position themselves. It's so that
yeah,
all the animations will more or less line up, as much as they could in 1999. Like when you hand things over and things like that. So like they're always standing, like, I don't know, 6 feet away from you, very COVID distance, I guess. And, it's like, you take the thing out of your backpack to hand over the money or the ingredients for the bullets or whatever you're having done. And like, and they take it and they put it away somewhere. And then they come out with another bag, which is the thing you're exchanging for goods, the goods and services you're getting back. And then you have that in your hand. And then like when you come out of that, sometimes it's still in your hand. It's just like, it's just wild. And it wasn't, everything kind of just takes that like level of things take a little time to do. You People in the world are doing them, and that lends this like air of the whole thing being kind of a living world in a way that's selecting from a menu and just like doing this transaction in a very quick way does not. It abstracts away all of these things, and I get why, like all of these things, like I said, they take time, but it is a sort of, it's one of those, I think, useful frictions, that do help to establish it as a world when there weren't a lot of technological tools to do so, right? Animation's very crude. The models are extremely crude, right? The
mm,
textures are very limited. So
yeah,
what can you do to make it feel living and breathing? Well, you can make the interactions feel deeper, because they take time and they simulate the things that people would actually do, in a barter economy or something like that, or whatever. As I pointed out, I think the very first week, like these guys take forever to die. They have this long, like, I'm dying, and like some of them, it seems like they're still dying when they're on the ground.
yeah.
They're like lying there and they're reaching out to the heavens.
There's definitely
Sometimes you,
some bugs. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it might be bugs, or it might be just like it's just takes this guy's just taking a while. Like you could finish him off if you want.
yeah.
Sometimes you see like a little effect that I now think of as like their soul, their
No,
essence
it
or
is.
whatever.
No, I was going to mention that
Yeah,
last
leaving
time.
their body. Yeah,
The Each of the essences that leave are the color related to their essence, I think.
their thing, right?
Because
Their jobs,
the combatants are all of the same essence, and so
right?
they're always like a warm color. But like I've seen, I don't remember when I must have saw somebody get killed by something else, and it was a green essence that came out. So I
Oh,
assume
interesting.
that was like the creative one or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that those things can. I mean, I haven't seen any other characters die, although I can imagine it because there's these birds that fly over with, well,
I think
whatever,
that's
with
might have been what it
rocks.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or it could have been there's the rocket launcher kind of thing that
Oh, right, yeah. Where
kills everything.
some enemies will, they're
Yeah.
not taken into account. Anybody,
Friendly fire.
yeah, friendly fire or civilians.
Um
Anyway, so yeah, that was just the kind of
No, I think it's a good point. I think that they have found I don't know, they also talk about this a lot, like games, especially the best games are often using what you have to make the most of it, and the constraints are good. So they're using the tools that they have, and they have set certain goals for themselves to try to, I would say, go beyond their means, right? Like
Yeah.
to the fact that, like for instance, Heza, um, he's the water vendor. He's on a patrol around the whole
Around the belt. Yeah.
city.
Yeah. They mentioned that. I haven't met him yet, but they mentioned it.
Yeah, and he literally is like
Yeah.
he's just it is a very it's you know it's a term that we throw around a lot, but like living world is a catchphrase at this point in game development, and it's like it is an early living world where things are on kind of a simulation kind of, or they have that feel to them.
Right.
And every world that I've gone in, like it's very John Carter in that way, because as soon as you step through a portal, you don't know what's on the other side,
Yep.
and B, as soon as you do, you're like taking it all in, and all of the zones are very different from each other. So it is this very stranger in a strange land moment, right? Where you're like, oh my God, what is this? And the other impressive thing coming to this second zone was how different it feels from the first zone.
Yeah.
And it's the same game, but the same rules apply. But like, in this one you're roof hopping, on top of the where I am on top of the buildings, and because there's a lot of good stuff up there. But
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
you can do that, and it's just completely changes the way the game feels. And then the central temple is cool because it's kind of got that landmark kind of ominous feel, which, by the way, I know you probably haven't been up there yet, but when you do, because I basically went up there and cleared cleared
Well,
everybody out.
they warned me off. They were like, "Don't go up there. It's very dangerous." I was like, "Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
good with
they
that
can't.
then."
They can't. Well, we didn't mention it in the state change of the first level, but once once we did the whole
Oh
Reese
yeah, the
thing,
soldiers go down in easier.
soldiers, yeah, three
Yeah.
shots now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Way
So
faster.
so it's definitely changes things. So you see that great impact of your colonialization.
Yeah, which is a huge
Um,
deal, though. I mean, it does really like.
hmm.
I when that happened, I was like, "Oh man, that actually made a difference." I can't believe I didn't make a note about that. I guess it happened late yesterday. I was heading to dinner, but I was like,
Yeah, we
"Wow, that
noticed.
actually that actually like that mattered."
Yeah, it helped.
It
And
wasn't just the checkbox.
they start doing push-ups, and they're like
Yeah, yeah.
target
Well, yeah, I noticed all
practicing.
that stuff, but
Yeah,
that the
but the
soldiers were easier to kill was
systemic.
like, whoa.
Yeah, the systemic side is interesting. So I assume the taxes will do some more stuff, and I don't know. It's really cool, but the temple, the kind of like courtyard areas of the temple and the structures of the architecture, they've used the voxels to make the architecture in this case,
Mm,
because it's this like very flowy kind of architecture that's kind of in an arc, kind of. It's hard
interesting.
to, like, spires almost, so it almost looks like terrain, but
Hmm.
it's architecture. So it's really fascinating, again, sort of using the tools that they had to make something very different. But it almost looks like you can run up them. You can't, but it's clearly voxels, but it's actually structure for the temple. It's very cool.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what what you can climb up because there was there was like a one of those weird bird nests in a like um promontory in the ocean in the first area. Well, I keep calling it the first area, but you know what I mean. Um, where you could
On
jump
that,
up
on
these
that, yeah.
platforms to get to the very top, and there's just you can get a couple bullets there. You might be able to shoot the eggs. I didn't because I'm not a monster, but I initially getting to that there were a bunch of spiders around it and they started coming after me, so I actually jumped up onto the side of the wall and was like
Oh,
climbing
yeah,
my way up my way quite a ways up it, like not all the way. I couldn't quite get to the top, mostly because I was like, okay, well, I've done this enough that I've had my fun and now I'm gonna go find a platform. But I got pretty surprisingly, like I'd say more than halfway up just by kind of like jumping and cheesing the cheesing
yeah.
the sort of terrains system, because when you're doing something like this, it's kind of like you can't count on things like, well, if the angle's this, it's more like, well, do you collide or not? Like, do you have a supporting surface or not? So it's a little different than how more traditional terrain models, I think, would handle that kind of navigation. So it was just interesting to run across that. Sorry, it just came to me when you were saying running up
No.
the spires or whatever.
Yeah, I just while you were talking though, I was interested to look because of that, I feel like there's probably a lot of shortcuts and stuff that you can cheese the system. And
Oh, I bet there are.
the
Yeah.
speed run world, any percent speed run for this game is 46 minutes. So, and I'm sure it has to include using the voxel terrain in some
Yeah.
nefarious manner.
Yeah. No doubt. No
So
doubt. Well, anyway.
So that was, I mean, I guess we hit the world structure quite heavily. So I think it's going to be coming back up, of course, and I think it's really, I'm excited about it and daunted by it too. But yeah, it'd be fascinating to see how it works. I mean, largely to your point on limitations and what they use the tools they have. Basically, this is a game of fetch quests. Like this is a FedEx, just FedEx your way through the game kind of stuff. Other than the combat,
I mean, he's dressed in orange, so
yeah. So I mean, it fits, but and that was they're not the only, they're not alone in that concept. But I will say
it became a thing, right? Because so many games did it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was it was one of the most obvious or the most logical tools that you had when you're making simple action games, as far as quests go. But to their credit, then the best way to obfuscate fetch quests is the world building and the deep. This is a segue to some of the story stuff, or if we want to hit something else next.
Yeah, no, let's hit it.
The world building is the other topic for me that it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and more interesting, and the conversations go places. And you have the sort of, we can joke about crops and taxes, but the fact that those are the focus areas makes the world more tangible for me. It's like, okay, yeah, they're tax, people have opinions about taxes, and the taxes clearly go to Feyron and all this kind of stuff, right? So there's all these kind of like, it's relatability, right? It's like,
yeah,
there is the episode 1 Star Wars episode 1 problem of like, it's boring as hell.
Yeah.
But also people understand the concepts, and there is a possibility some of these concepts actually came from Earth.
Right.
So
you don't say.
so I've been appreciating that the depth of the world building that they have and the conversations. Like there's a lot of NPCs in this game and a lot of like minor NPCs, but they still have quite a bit to say about what's going on. As an example, which I mean, you may or may not,
even the drones, the sort of characters who don't have any kind of unique dialogue have a lot to say about the world.
Yeah, right, exactly. They will give you the general lay of the land, but like I guess what I'd call side quests on some of this stuff too, where the main quest will lead you to other NPCs that you might get something additional from that I think are optional, but they still give you a lot of backstory. But then one example, I don't know if you met this one person who's basically a beggar.
Yeah, I just met him.
Unhoused. Yeah. The Mogi, is that the one you met?
Yeah, Mogi. Yeah,
Mogi. He. Have you talked to him fully?
I was literally in the middle of that conversation when I had to turn it off to go to our meeting.
It's a long-winded, yeah. He warns you,
so
yeah, he warns you that he has a lot to say.
Yeah, he said that at the beginning. I was like, oh, I don't know. I got like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Can we do it in 3 minutes, Mogai?
But the thing is like he's very missable, and there's others of his type throughout the city. So you might talk to. In fact, I've talked to multiple other ones that are just in his exact state. But he, in particular, basically reveals an enormous amount of backstory about what is going on from this one, just off, not necessarily off the beaten path, but, just this one character that most people probably would never talk to.
Right.
So unless you are talking to almost everybody you see, it's really missable. But he
does call out to you. Or
they all do, though.
Yeah, that's
all
true.
All of the beggars,
Oh, they do. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah,
Most of them,
he's
if
the
you
only
go
one
by,
he's the only one I've seen, I think.
okay, yeah,
Because
there's
I
probably
didn't run around a ton because I kind of went in the front gate. It was interesting. The first time I went in, this one dude wanted to talk to me, in the second, and then I had died, and then so I was like, "Oh, I have to reload. Oh no, I have to start this whole area again." And it was a different guy who talked to me and told me the same stuff about and basically setting up the area and the taxes and all that stuff. You got to talk to this guy. You got to talk to
one of
that
the
guy.
guardians. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, so
Well, I think there's at least half a dozen other beggars in the
okay, cool.
in
Yeah,
the
I mean, it makes
town, and
sense that
they're
they would try to reuse some of
they're
the
tucked away.
animations or whatever.
And I think most of them will say, well, he may say something different. I don't remember. You might be right, but my point is like I think a lot. It's very easy, possibly easy for people to not talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, I only turned towards him because I heard him call out, and I was like, oh, I don't think he said that last time I was in this, walking by near here, because there's the dude with a problem with his crane. He's right near that. This
Did
crane
you
that's like
do the
swinging
crane thing?
wildly. I did, yeah.
That is one of my favorite puzzles in a long time.
I don't. Do you get anything for it? You just get the satisfaction of doing it.
He gave you a bunch of stuff. If you talk to him again.
Oh, maybe I did. Did he give me a bunch of stuff? Maybe he did, and I just just
It's
thought
not
about it.
the interface isn't really good at that. Like you'll
Yeah.
see at the bottom of the screen a bunch of items added to your inventory. Usually they're resources though. So
Oh, okay.
it's like money and like metal and things like that. So
I
it's
don't know
not
what half of the resources I have are because it's like it's a clapper
yeah.
T, and I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I need to experiment with those. I did open the manual finally, and I think they do explain some of that. There's a lot of gadgets in this game that I'm not using.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
think one is a mine, and one is a hologram that you can use
Oh, like Total Recall. Your way.
distract people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they all do something, but I just need to experiment with them. Um,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
Total
Anyway,
Recall would have been very much in the air. Another Mars game, or
well,
Mars
I think Slade
thing.
is very yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some total the even the sci-fi tech I feel like is kind of very of that ilk, but
Yeah.
I that crane puzzle, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe that this is what they wanted me to do, and I was like, this isn't going to work. There's no way this is going to work. And then
Right.
it
Yeah.
worked.
Explain to people what, because
Okay, it's a very simple puzzle, but I don't know if I've ever seen it in a shooter before. So somebody must have done it, but it's brilliant. So I think it's brilliant because it's so simple. So there's this swinging crane that's out of control and it's got this big crate on it, and this guy's like trying to shepherd it so nobody gets hit. And he's like, "Can you help me? I don't want the crate to be destroyed. So I don't want to like cut the rope or whatever, but I need it to stop swinging so it won't kill anybody. But I need help. Can you do something? Maybe your weapons
yeah,
can
your
impact
lightest weapon.
your lightest weapon can impact it just enough to stop it from swinging so it won't hurt anybody." So I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess I understand the physics there. I think I know what you're trying to tell me, but that can't be what you want me to do. So then you start shooting it with your pistol, on the opposite side that it's swinging to try to get the momentum to simmer down. He says maybe it will come to its stop to stop on its own. And I'm like, yeah, dude, maybe it will, or maybe it won't, because this is ridiculous. And then it does. It's like
Yeah.
if you do the counterbalance of it, the counter swing of it, then it eventually comes to a stop by shooting it. And I just thought that was delight. I couldn't believe it worked.
Yeah, it was super
Amazing.
cool. It was a super cool moment. I agree. I was like, this can't really. In fact, I went up to get a higher vantage point on it because I was like, it'd be easier to shoot it from up here, and I got a bunch of enemies at me. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll deal with all these guys first. And then I went back down and talked to him again. He was like, oh yeah, I got a real problem here. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're doing this then. And yeah, I mean, it does sort of support the idea that that's what you're going to do because it'll put the bead, the red dot on
Right,
the thing,
right.
right? So that does kind of like,
Most objects don't have that. Yeah,
yeah,
so you
exactly.
do.
Usually you
Yeah.
pull a weapon, and it's unless there's an enemy around that just kind of goes off into space or whatever, and it won't land on anything. And this one kind of auto targets. There's kind of an auto targeting that helps, especially with verticality. In general, it helps target enemies, but it also will help if something's elevated. In this case, it was for me, and so it was like, oh he really does just want me to shoot this,
Shit is great
It
as it's
reminded
coming
me
toward
of
me,
a
so I
puzzle
can.
in Grim Fandango, which is kind of like you have to kind of destroy a machine by getting a sort of resonant frequency going in these pipes that you like start and stop. Like it's kind of similar kind of vibe to this
Mm-hmm.
one that I thought of when I was doing it. I was like, really? Huh? Came out what, same year? I think same year. Maybe no, the year before, 98. I think Grim Fandango. So
I wish I had. I wish I had. I wish I had played this game before before the Tomb Raider. We worked on the Tomb Raider reboot because one of our puzzle pillars for that game, which is public knowledge, was making physics a part of puzzles, and
uh-huh.
the opening the game with that buoyancy. I don't know if you remember. There's that flooded area where there's a lot of floating
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the charge there was making a puzzle out of buoyancy
Yeah.
and physics, and like this is a perfect example of that. In fact, I'm sure they must have done something like this later, and I forget if Rise had one like this, but it's such a great idea, but it's also just like using a gun to do something you never would have thought. And of course ammo's precious, so it's a little. I had a lot at that point, so I wasn't
I did
worried.
too. Yeah, I had over 450. So I was like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's fine, and I think they assume most people will, but it was just clever. But I don't remember why I was talking about that. That was a good like little moment. But the other world building example I'll give that's sort of like above and beyond is when you start talking to the gun vendors or the gear gadget vendors. They sell guns and ammo and stuff too. They have a whole backstory about why they're doing this.
Right. I know.
they're
Yeah.
like they're like no, they're
Exactly.
not just merchants. They're
Yeah.
like, no, we're brothers. We're all brothers, and we're competing to make the most money so our father will.
Will leave us the business. Yeah.
Well,
And we
yeah,
don't, and they're like, well, why don't you just like band together? Well, we hate each other. It's just like it keeps going. Like
yeah.
it's very funny because he's the whole time he's voicing. It's very funny because he's voicing frustrations you always have in games of like, but I'm here to save the world. Can't you just help me out? you
And
know,
it's my stuff.
yeah,
We're
and you're making me
selling.
buy my stuff back. It's very good. It's very good.
So, like, that could totally be a video game thing if they wanted it to, but they're like, no, we're gonna write a backstory for this, and
Yeah,
you see all those guys around, and they're brothers, and what they're doing, and like that is unprecedented for vendors in a game of this era, in a shooter no less, where I'm buying my own guns back for myself. It's just wild.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just
It's very
more.
cool.
Those are just examples. There's just more. Have you found the flautist or the singer yet?
I think I went into that room, or I was headed towards that room, maybe when I heard the beggar
There's
call.
a couple people with flutes, but
Okay,
there's
yeah.
there's one in particular, and then there's also one that will want you to sing with him.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
And it's a dialogue. It's like a dialogue tree where you actually are singing. You're trying to sing with him. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
So they just
and
they just went all
yeah,
in on
they
that
went
stuff.
all in. They're having fun with it for sure. Well, maybe that's a good segue to the music, and maybe that'll be our last topic this week. It's
So good.
a it is so good. As we heard from Vitor, I believe his name was last week. It's the Moscow Symphony Orchestra, which would have been
Yeah.
early kind of use of something like that high level. It's kind of a thing. Obviously, after that is certainly this would have been obviously in the CD-ROM era. So I mean, the space was there to do it, but and so more people were experimenting with different ways to use music. Of course, LucasArts had iMuse and all of that stuff. One of the things I've really appreciated is the world state information that the music will convey. That's the other way I know that I'm getting near to dudes that I'm going to evade. I'm doing less of that now because you kind of put me off my fear last time we talked about it.
Mm.
I was worried about running out of ammo and all this stuff, and so I was avoiding a lot of conflict. And now I'm like, okay, well, I'll just take out these guys. But I was avoiding it for a while, and part of the way I knew was like the music would start getting tense. Like,
Hmm.
okay, you're entering into the combat state. It's not complicated, but the music is excellent, and it doesn't get boring. I enjoy listening to it all the time. It's music and choral, with I guess an invented language or invented syllables. I don't know if there's a full language behind it.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very appropriate, I think, for the genre. It's very high science fiction. I mentioned Star Wars at one point. It's clear inspiration. In fact, there you'll get to one of the flautists, and that's how you say that, right?
Yeah,
Flautist.
flautist. Mhm.
Um, and he is literally playing Star Wars.
Oh wow.
They that definitely didn't make it past, or they did make
Nobody
it
caught that.
past.
Yeah.
No one caught that, but he's like, I forget which theme it is, but it's the, or it's one of the romantic themes.
Hmm.
Anyway, and and he's just doing those notes. But anyway, yeah, it's very Star Wars. It's very very grand. It makes running slowly around the terrain, much more bearable, I think, sometimes, where you just feel like, yeah, I'm on an adventure. And then the one of note, to your point on the choral, they started playing a new score once you
Yeah, and Talanzaar.
basically
Yeah.
once you started the kind of rebellion
Oh
in
right.
the
Yeah, that
first
too. Hmm.
town, and it became this very like bombastic choral like chanting, where they're like, it's almost as if the town was singing,
Yeah.
and they're like,
Yeah.
they're like, okay, we're going to battle. And so I just think the score is amazing.
I assume they're actually singing a paean to Mar, whom everyone loves. So
That's true. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
all singing about how great Mar is. Oh, Mar! Finally, you saw the light.
He asked them to do that for him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. He is a very memorable
he
character,
really
and
is.
how that all plays out
Yeah.
too. Because it wasn't as simple as just get him the essence. It was like, or the essence idol. What was it
Right.
called?
Yeah. The Essence
Essence
Stone.
artifact.
Yeah.
You give the essence stone. You give it to the Zeb or whoever it was. Um, but then then you talk to him Mar later, and then you convince him.
Yeah.
Um,
It's more that you have to be. Everybody has to like you. He's like, if everybody likes you, then I'll listen to you.
yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like
Yeah, it's
your reputation
very
has to.
reputation. Yeah,
Yeah.
and reputation is a concept here, because you can actually ask the Shamazars at any time, what is my reputation, and they will tell you how the zone feels about you. So it's sort of like they're keeping track of that.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah, and
I don't.
apparently, it can be impacted as well by you could go and kill a bunch of the natives, um,
Oh,
and that would turn it
yeah, I
down.
assume that would be bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and it
yeah.
might make it
So
impossible, maybe, to complete the game. I don't know. I'm a little worried. I'd be worried about that. I would never do that myself, but it made me think about that at the time. Like, yeah, could you
making
just say,
it dynamic, your own difficulty
yeah,
setting, like make it hard
well,
for yourself.
making it impossible to finish is one thing, then
Yeah. But I
versus
mean,
difficult. Yeah. Maybe
maybe
it's
it's
possible to come back from. Yeah.
but to your point on sort of the simulation and the system side of it, it's like the fact that they have a light reputation system is interesting. And then of course we mentioned the enemy sort of states right
Yeah.
throughout, which I assume obviously has to transfer to all the zones, and because you can kind of probably finish them in any order except for this one. Um, then they have to account for all of that stuff, right? Because you can
Yeah.
go to one of the other ones, and we don't know what impact it has. I hope it's not just health, um, but maybe it is. I'm
Each
hoping
thing you
there's
do is
one that's related.
going to do other impact. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope there's one that's related to like weaponry or something. Like maybe you diminish their weaponry or something like that,
Yeah. That would be
which would
cool.
be interesting. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's put a pin in it there. We're apparently going to finish this in this next week, right? That's your plan. You're going to
Yeah.
mainline this and finish it in the next week. I'm going to try. I don't know.
It's definitely gotten its hooks into
Oh
me. I
yeah,
will say
yeah, me
that.
too. It finally did. When I was playing it the day off we had this week, because over the weekend I was spending a lot of time on my JRPG that I finished, um, and and then I was like, oh, I should have a bunch of time. I should get this done and play a bunch more of this. And I was like, I can't believe this is only as far as I got, and there's 4 other worlds or whatever. So it will be interesting to see how this week goes as far as that goes. You can send us your reviews, your email at devgameclub@gmail.com. We're also on the web at devgameclub.com. And my friend here is occasionally twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end. This week, I am going to attempt to stream Castlevania
Yes.
Dracula X, which I believe is a remake of Rondo of Blood, which I believe is the first appearance of Richter Belmont, in honor
Yeah.
of Belmont. So if you want to stop by and say hello or say a few words, I'm going to be playing the hardest Castlevania apparently, in Belmont's name.
Yeah, good luck with that. You will see that announcement go live in our Discord. There's a link for the Discord as well in the show notes. It's a fan-run Discord. Of course, you've heard a lot about it at the beginning of the show. I won't go into it more here. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by the friend of the cast, Aaron Evers, and our logo, that Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia, amongst others. Have fun reminiscing about your conversion rituals this week, and good night.
Good night.